G'day folks, Max here from Evidence-Based Football Manager. Welcome to the first installment of my FM23 Training Analysis series. In the next few videos, I'll be going through the various game mechanics in FM23 related to training and player development, with the ultimate end goal of being able to construct a custom training schedule that can boost the growth of your players as much as possible, as fast as possible. Today's video will be about the basic pattern of player growth in FM23. Some of the questions I'll be attempting to answer today include: at what age does player growth start slowing down in FM23? How important is training for player growth? How important is match experience for player growth? Do players with a lower PA rating grow slower than players with a higher PA rating? Are there any attributes that grow faster than others, or do they sort of all grow at the same rate? All of these questions will be answered in this video today. So for today's experiments, I've created a custom league using the Football Manager game editor. There are 4 teams in the league, team A, B, C, and D, and I'm in charge of all 4 of those teams. These 4 teams are set up to be exactly identical to one another. So same sets of players, same coaching staff, same medical staff, same facilities, etc. I'm just using 4 teams instead of 1 because it just allows me to gather a larger sample size in a much shorter period of time. The players in all 4 teams are 10 in all attributes, which translates to 97 current ability rating for outfield players and 86 current ability rating for goalkeepers. All players have a potential ability rating of 200, which is the highest possible PA rating in the game. I deliberately made the gap between the starting CA of the players and the PA rating of the players as wide as possible in order to stimulate player growth as much as possible. More on that later. My first objective was to find out the effect that training and match experience have on player growth. So I set up 4 different scenarios. Scenario 1. The players play between 20 to 30 senior match appearances in a season, as well as doing training as they normally would in a regular Football Manager save. The training schedule that I used in this experiment is just the default schedule that's already in the training calendar when you start a new save in FM23. Scenario 2. The players do normal regular training, just like Scenario 1, but this time they're suspended for the whole year. You can see right here that these guys, they're all serving a suspension until the end of the season, which means that they'll all have 0 match experience for the whole season. So that's no club matches, no international matches, no friendlies, no nothing. All they do is training for the whole year. Scenario 3. The players play between 20 to 30 senior matches, but this time I go into the training calendar and I wipe out all training for the whole season. So no training for the whole season in Scenario 3. Lastly, Scenario number 4, no training and no match experience. The players are still at the club, but they're just doing absolutely nothing for the whole year. So let's have a look at the results. I have 2 line graphs here that show you the results from the 4 different scenarios. The graph on the left is for outfield players and the graph on the right is for goalkeepers. Actually, what I'll do is I'll display the full details of the experiment on the screen right now, so feel free to pause the video and have a quick read before you continue watching. So the horizontal axis here represents the age of players, and the vertical axis represents the growth in CA rating throughout the season. For example, an 18-year-old outfield player who does training and plays matches will grow on average by around 20 CA points in a single season. So by the end of the season, his CA rating would go from 97 to around 117. On the other hand, a 23-year-old goalkeeper who plays matches but doesn't do any training for the whole season will grow on average by around 5 CA points in a single season. So his CA rating would go from 86 to maybe around 91. If you have a look at the graph for the outfield players, you can see that player growth is the greatest when players are doing training and is playing matches. Remember, this is the first scenario that I told you about, represented by the yellow line in these 2 graphs. The rate of growth is the fastest during teenage years, surprise, surprise. Then after that, there is a gradual taper in the rate of growth that occurs slowly but surely as players age. When players reach the age of 26, there is a sudden drop in the rate of growth, and from 27 onwards, there is pretty much no growth that takes place, even if the players are doing training and playing regular football. The second scenario is represented by the grey line here. So this is when the players are doing training but not playing any matches throughout the season. The general pattern of this grey line is pretty similar to the first line. So the amount of growth is the fastest during teenage years, followed by a gradual taper afterwards. From the age of 21, there is pretty much zero growth when players aren't playing any matches, which I guess highlights the importance of regular match experience if you want to see your players continue developing past the age of 21. The third scenario is represented by the red line here. So this is when the players are playing adequate amount of first team football but not doing any training. This is something you might see in a lower league save, where the players are contracted on a part-time basis. So they're only present at the club a few days a week when there's a match going on, but they're doing very little training at the club. The amount of growth here is even lower than the second scenario. So by the age of 19, players pretty much stop growing if they are not doing any training. And from the age of 23 onwards, there's actually negative growth in CA rating. This means that when players over the age of 23 are not doing any training, their CA rating will start declining even if they are playing regular first team football. Lastly, let's have a look at the fourth scenario represented here by the blue line. So this is when players don't train and are not playing any matches. As one would expect, player growth is the lowest here out of the four scenarios. During teenage years, there's a tiny bit of growth, but from the age of 19 onwards, growth is pretty much non-existent. And from the age of 23 onwards, there is negative growth in CA, just like the third scenario. Next, let's have a look at the growth of goalkeepers. You can see straight away the pattern of growth for goalkeepers is rather different from the growth of outfield players. First of all, have a look at the yellow line here. So this is the first scenario where the goalkeepers are doing training as well as playing regular first team football. You can see that the amount of growth for goalkeepers is pretty consistent from the age of 15 all the way up to 23 and maybe even up to 25. This is in contrast to the growth of outfield players, where the decline in the rate of growth is a lot steeper, as you can see right here. With outfield players, somewhere between 26 and 27 is sort of like the cutoff line, where the players pretty much stop growing. But with goalkeepers, the cutoff age seems to be a little bit higher, maybe around 28 to 29. The three other lines here are all placed much lower than the first line. This means that just like outfield players, goalkeepers need both training and regular match experience for maximum growth. There is one big difference between outfield players and goalkeepers. With goalkeepers, even when they don't do any training, their CA rating will not dip below 0. Remember, for outfield players, the absence of training caused them to start losing their CA rating from the age of 23 onwards, but the same thing does not happen for goalkeepers. So what are the implications that we can draw by looking at these two graphs? It's the fact that training and match experience are two crucial ingredients for player growth in Football Manager. And you might think, duh, I already knew that, but this is the evidence for it. Remember, on this channel, we take nothing for granted, so nothing is considered common knowledge until there's evidence to support it. So if you have teenage wonder kids in your squad and you're trying to squeeze as much growth from them as possible, as you rightly should, you gotta give them plenty of game time. Don't just expect them to grow by themselves if they're not getting any match exposure. Of course, there's the question of whether reserve team matches count towards match experience, such as the U23 leagues or the U18 leagues that are held in the English Premier League. I don't have the answers to that yet, I'm afraid. I will be looking into the value of reserve team matches in the upcoming videos. But for now, the results that you see here today proves at the very least that you shouldn't have any players in your senior team who are just being neglected and not playing any matches. Now, there is one important thing to note when you're studying the growth of players in Football Manager, and it is that the rate of growth is dependent on the PA rating of the player. For example, if you have two 18-year-old players, both with a CA rating of 100, but the first one has a PA rating of 140 and the second one has a PA rating of 180. The latter will grow a lot faster than the former, even if the two players are exposed to the exact same conditions, such as the amount of training that they do, the amount of match experience that they get, and so on. So I've done an experiment to demonstrate this. Have a look at these two graphs here. The one on the left is for outfield players, and the one on the right is for goalkeepers. We'll have a look at the outfield players first. So this yellow line here is the same yellow line from the previous graph. So it's when the outfield players are doing training and has match experience. The green line that you see here is when the players are exposed to the exact same environment, doing training as well as having match experience, but the PA rating of the players were changed from 200 to 120. So the only difference between these two lines is that for the one at the top, the players had a PA rating of 200, and for the line at the bottom, the players had a PA rating of 120. And you can see that the green line at the bottom is placed a lot lower than the yellow line, meaning that players with a lower PA rating will develop a lot slower compared to players with a higher PA rating. With goalkeepers, the difference between the yellow line and the green line is not as wide as the outfield players, but still, players with a lower PA ceiling will develop slower than players with a higher PA ceiling. Most wonder kids in the game who are capable of growing into regular starters for the top leagues in the game will have a PA rating of anywhere between 150 to 180. So the amount of growth that you'll actually see for most wonder kids in the game will be somewhere between these two lines. During teenage years, they might grow maybe anywhere between 10 to 15 CA points in a single year, and after that, growth will slowly slow down. Of course, PA rating is just one of the factors that determine the rate of growth. So the actual growth in CA for your wonder kids in your saves will also depend on heaps of other factors as well, such as club facilities, quality of the coaching staff, hidden attributes of the players, any injuries the players might pick up, and so on. Okay, so far I've only been talking about the growth in the CA ratings of players, but it's also worth having a look into the actual types of attributes that grow at different age groups. So I want you to have a look at these two tables. These tables are basically a rearranged version of the same data that I used to make the line graphs that I showed you earlier. They show you, so these tables show you the range of attributes that grow when the players are doing training and has match experience, depending on the different age groups. The table at the top is for outfield players and the one at the bottom is for goalkeepers. If you have a look at the outfield players, you can see that there are two important ages that sort of act as demarcation points where the pattern of growth suddenly changes. Those two ages are 19 and 27. You can see that before the age of 19 is when the number of attributes that grow is the largest. The only attributes that do not grow before the age of 19 are aggression, bravery, determination, and also the goalkeeping attributes. From 19 years onwards, there is a sudden drop in the number of attributes that grow. You can see that attributes such as corners, crossing, free kicks, long throws, and penalties do not grow anymore past the age of 19. And 27 is the age where growth basically comes to a halt. You can see after the age of 27 that none of the attributes are growing anymore, except maybe agility. Not too sure what happened there, but most other attributes stop growing past the age of 27. And let's have a look at the table for goalkeepers. So straight away, you can see that there's a lot less growth going on for the technical attributes, except maybe first touch and passing. And there's a lot of growth going on for the goalkeeping attributes, which is something you would expect. I told you that for outfield players, 19 and 27 are the two important demarcation points for growth. For goalkeepers, I don't think anything significant happens at the age of 19. And the cutoff point for growth for goalkeepers is around 29 instead of 27. So for outfield players, 27 is where growth doesn't happen anymore. But for goalkeepers, growth will continue for a further 2 years until the age of 29. I guess this is a fair representation of what happens to footballers in real life. Goalkeepers typically hit their prime between late 20s to their early 30s, and they also generally have a longer lifespan compared to outfield players, which is represented quite well in FM23 as evidenced by this table that you're seeing right now. Okay, one last thing I wanted to show you today. Let's have a look at an actual wonder kid from FM23 and see how player growth actually occurs in the game. It's sort of like a case study where we can compare the lab results with a real life example. So I present to you Endrick from Brazil, who is, some of you may know, he is one of the hottest wonder kids in FM23. He is at a tender age of 15 at the start of the game, and he had a PA rating of 180 in my save file. So he's a good example that we can use to study how players actually develop in FM23. I simulated the game for 18 years until the year 2040, and I recorded the CA rating and the attributes of Endrick every year to track his growth until the age of 33. In this save file, Endrick stays at Palmeiras Football Club in Brazil until he was 22, before he moves to Manchester United, where he spends the best years of his career. So first of all, let's have a look at Endrick's CA rating and how he changes over time. At the start of the save, Endrick has a CA rating of 102. You can see that every season his CA rating grows by around 5 to 10 points until the age of 27. After he turns 27, there's pretty much no more growth that takes place. So how does this compare with what we talked about earlier from all the line graphs that I showed you? I've told you that a typical wonder kid in FM23 will grow anywhere between 10 to 15 CA points during teenage years, and that growth will slow down after the age of 19. So with Endrick, the rate of growth when he's a teenager is a little bit slower than I thought it would be. This could be due to the fact that Endrick was in Palmeiras as a teenager, where maybe the quality of coaching is not too great. Or it could be the injuries that he picked up during his teenage years, which could have hampered his growth. After he's moved to Manchester United, the pattern of growth is more or less in agreement with what I predicted earlier from the line graphs. So you can see Endrick grows by around 5 CA points per year up until the age of 27, and not much growth happens after that. Now let's have a look at the range of attributes that actually grow over time for Endrick. This is actually the part where I was a little bit surprised. According to the table that I showed you earlier and the line graphs that I showed you earlier, there were some attributes that stopped growing after the age of 19, such as crossing, corners, free kicks and penalties. But with Endrick, those attributes continue to grow well past the age of 19. You can see here that Endrick's crossing grew from 11 to 12 between the age of 32 and 33, and his free kick grew from 12 to 13 between the age of 31 to 32. Lots of other attributes also showed growth when Endrick was in his late 20s and even in his early 30s. It's surprising to see that a lot of these attributes can grow past the age of 27, which is something that could not be predicted from the experiments that I showed you earlier. There must be factors in the game other than training and match exposure that can trigger the growth of player attributes. This could be individual training, it could be the natural fitness attribute of the players, it could be mentoring, it could be the actual amount of penalty attempts that lead to the growth of the penalty attribute, it could be the actual amount of the crossing attempts during matches that trigger the growth of the crossing attribute. I don't know the exact answer, but I will try to find the answers for you in the upcoming videos. Okay, here's a summary of everything that we talked about today. 1. Training and match experience are two crucial ingredients for player growth in FM23. Growth will be stunted if a player is missing either of the two ingredients. 2. The rate of growth in the game is heavily dependent on the PA ratings of players. Players with the same CA rating who are exposed to the same set of stimuli will develop at different rates if they have different PA ratings. 3. For outfield players, 19 and 27 seem to be 2 points in their career where the rate of growth will suddenly slow down, and the number of attributes that grow will be reduced. For goalkeepers, that age seemed to be 29, so it will occur a little bit later than outfield players. 4. There must be factors in the game other than training and match experience that can further trigger the growth of player attributes. I don't know exactly what those factors are, but stay tuned to this channel and I will try to deliver the answers to you. Okay, I think I'll end the video right there. The Excel table that we talked about today will be uploaded on my Dropbox, so if you wanted to have a look at all this data yourselves, feel free to go to my Dropbox and you'll be able to find the Excel file there. I'll provide the link below for the Dropbox folder. Okay, I'll see you guys all next time. And Australia's playing Argentina in like 6 hours. So by the time this video is uploaded on YouTube, Lionel Messi would be knocked out of the World Cup by the Socceroos. You just know it's gonna happen. Okay, I'll see you all next time. Cheers, guys. Alright people, I'm at Federation Square. There are heaps of people here. It's 6 AM in the morning. Oh gosh, it's really packed. I don't even know if I can get in. Jeez, heaps of people. Oh, look at that. Alright people, I'm at Amy Park. The match is about to start. Australia versus Argentina. There's heaps of people here. Go Socceroos! Australia's just lost 2-1 to Argentina. Oh, it was a very good effort. What do you reckon? Huge chance of winning. Very good effort. Yeah. Very solid effort from the Socceroos.